Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Brayman, licensed clinical psychologist in Winter Park, Florida. But I work in Florida, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, thanks to the magic of web cameras, internet, and computers. Today, I'm here to talk to you about suicide. Every now and then, perhaps yesterday even, you may read about an individual who has committed or attempted suicide in the news. And one thing I want to discuss is a concern you may have right now, that perhaps by listening to this video or talking to someone else in your life about suicide, that you're risking giving someone the idea of committing suicide. But the number one myth about suicide is that talking about suicide causes it. It doesn't. And in fact, the more we talk about suicide, suicidal thoughts, and people struggling with suicidal thoughts, the better we can make it for those individuals. To decrease the sense of something wrong or bad about themselves. Because if you're joining now, there's nothing wrong about having suicidal thoughts. Many individuals have them, and the important part is what we do with those thoughts. So first off, at the risk of Facebook telling me I have too much text on the screen, here's the number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255. If you're struggling with suicidal thoughts or know someone who is, please call that number or share the number with them. It's completely confidential. You can speak to someone any time of day or night, all days of the year. Additionally, if you're struggling with suicide, it's important to recognize that you may feel alone, hopeless, full of despair, or like a burden to those around you. But one thing that's common for many individuals struggling with suicidal thoughts or thinking of suicide is that when we're in so much distress, it's hard to solve problems. And that's what we're experiencing when we have thoughts of suicide. We're facing what feels like an overwhelming problem, whether that's a recent divorce or breakup, the loss of a loved one, a loss of a job, or perhaps chronic illness. And we haven't been able to find a way out. So the best thing to do when you're struggling to come up with a solution is to talk to someone, whether that's a family member, a friend, someone at work or school, or calling a confidential lifeline or a local therapist. It's important to realize that you're not alone, no matter how much it may feel that way at the time. Another thing to keep in mind is some things that place people at risk of suicide. First of all, it's important to realize that simply having a thought of suicide doesn't mean that someone's in imminent risk. But if they're talking about a plan, or have access to firearms, have recently been discharged from a psychiatric hospital, or are displaying very poor problem solving, it's important to reach out to them and see how they're doing. If someone's begun drinking or using drugs significantly more than they normally do, that's a concern as well as if they're withdrawing from their friends, their family, work, or enjoyed activities, to keep an eye out and reach out to them. And if you're joining now, welcome. Glad to see some folks joining live. If you're watching this on the replay, welcome as well. Love your comments and thoughts below. Feel free to like or share with your friends. Another thing that I want to talk about is what I'm asking about if you're a client of mine, and I ask you, have you had any thoughts of suicide or wanting to harm yourself or wanting to harm anyone else lately? Because some people seem to be uncertain, and the truth is, if I'm asking you those questions, it's because I want to know. Therapy is a place where you can talk about anything and everything. And it's important to know that sharing with your therapist that you're having thoughts of suicide doesn't immediately mean that they're going to call and admit you to a hospital. What it means is they're going to talk with you, just like any other topic, and they're going to explore what's been leading to those thoughts, how you felt about those thoughts, and what the two of you can do together. Another thing to keep in mind is it's one thing to have a thought of suicide, and it's another thought to want to act on that thought. So every now and then we all have thoughts that might just pop into our head unbidden, that may not really have anything to do with how we're feeling. The very first lesson I learned in graduate school was it's not a suicidal thought if the person is actively saying they don't want to do that. Now, there are some mixed things in that, but the important thing to keep in mind is the person talking about acting on it. Regardless, if you're not a professional in mental health, please, if you know someone talking about suicide, wanting to end their life, or wishing they just didn't exist anymore, help them to reach out and connect with resources in the area. Whether that's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline or calling up a local therapist to see if they can schedule an appointment, it's good to keep in mind. And remember, having thoughts about suicide doesn't make you crazy. It makes you someone who's in a very tough spot and could really use some support in that moment. So I hope you reach out, and I hope if you know someone struggling with suicide or suicidal thoughts, that you reach out to them as well. Because remember, it's a myth that talking about suicide causes it. In fact, talking about suicide prevention, and resources for those individuals struggling with suicidal thoughts or depression, loneliness, a sense of desperation or being a burden on others. These are all great ways to help individuals with suicide and reduce the stigma in our world for thinking about suicide. Another thing that I want to keep in people's mind is that oftentimes coping with suicidal thoughts is a temporary thing, which means that for many people with suicidal thoughts, they're not thinking about it 24/7, 365 days a year. It might be in the very lowest moments in life. And that's something to keep in mind as well. That's sometimes just spending that time with someone or talking to them during that time. Even if it's not necessarily talking about the thought they're having, but just sitting with them during that difficult time can be a lot. And sometimes, when I'm working with people in therapy, that's just what we do. We sit with those difficult feelings, those emotions that other people may have told you aren't acceptable or they're not comfortable sitting with, because that's what your therapist is there for. I'm there to sit with any feelings and emotions and thoughts you have, even the ones that leave you feeling uncomfortable. And so it's good to keep in mind that you don't have to sit with your thoughts and your feelings alone. There are people to help you. And there is hope. It may not always feel like that. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but there is hope. And I want you to know that. Whether that's reaching out to me if you're in Florida, New Jersey, or Pennsylvania, or reaching out to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, or going to Good Therapy or Psychology Today, to commercial online directories of therapists. I hope that if you feel you need help, you reach out to someone today. Again, the number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. My phone number at my office is 407-413-8169. Again, that's 407-413-8169. Offering mental health services in Spanish and English, both online and in my Winter Park, Florida office. I am available to you. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you found this helpful. And I hope that if you or any individuals you know are struggling with suicide, you're able to connect with the resources that are out there for you. Thank you very much for your attention, and may you have the day that you wish to have. Thank you.